Can you tell the difference? I mean, can you tell when you're seeing a cheap knockoff or an imitation or the genuine article? Or do you have to look at the label? Can you discern between a straight shooter and someone who's trying to dupe you? Asking for a friend who will vote. Can you tell when something is verifiably true and when it's an alternative fact? See how even words can't really be trusted? Musicians and artists and creators of all kind go out of their way to safeguard their brand or their product. To infringe on their property is a violation of copyright law, or forgery, or patent infringement, or piracy. Counterfeits are not recent phenomenon. They've existed for as long as we have recorded oral and written history. Could we say that the separated one that Susan read about in the text, or the one who considered himself on a much higher level than this lowly commoner, represented a type of counterfeit? Pretending to be someone genuinely spiritual when listing his qualifications seemed to be what was most important to him. This person, this separated one, lists his achievements almost in a way that was meant to impress and likely to intimidate the one who worshiped next to him. I wish we didn't do this in the church, the broader church, but we do. We create categories and checklists for doing right things, being good enough, appearing holy, impressive. We make sure to say just the right thing, have the right credentials, believe the right things, which usually turn out to be the things we think are right. Prayer for people like this separated one, or the religious elite, easily becomes an opportunity to parade good deeds or to appear holy. Did you notice how demoralizing this list was for the other worshiper? He in turn refers to himself as a pitiful man, full of bad thoughts and wrongdoing. Can't we all identify with that? Anytime we create a sense of unworthiness in another human being, we live a counterfeit life. To be a safe place and to create a safe space requires the genuine. Jesus said, "The ones who think too highly of themselves will be brought down low. Those who humble themselves will be lifted up." For those of us who belong to the Christian tradition, declaring ourselves righteous and superior is an ancient and historical practice. The very reason that we need to set aside a month during which to recognize Native American heritage and make regular land acknowledgments on Sundays is because of European conquest and subjugation and forced conversion of those who are already living and worshiping on this land. If you've never read the 1493 Doctrine of Discovery, a papal bull issued by the Vatican and implemented by the monarchies, it's critical reading for each person who claims to be Christian. There is so much that could be said about that, but just in a nutshell, this edict sanctioned the conquest and colonization of non-Christians who were considered enemies of Christ in Africa and in the Americas. Blatant categories were set: adherence to the Catholic Church, as outlined by them, and enforced by the rulers who functioned as the church's emissaries and military tools. I mention that because it's critically important that we realize this at this time in history, a time when the rhetoric of Christian domination and an attempt to impose certain beliefs upon an entire population is occurring. right now. What European settlers have done to the land and the native population is abhorrent. As a nation, we have never officially declared this violation of people's rights to live and worship freely and the subsequent genocide as the horrific act that it is. We have also not acknowledged that our climate crisis is in part a direct result of Western Christians' stance over millennia, turning a blind eye to nature as one of our ancestors. Because of this, the people of European descent keep acting out this self-declared position of superiority and disregard for planet Earth. Listen to what this text that Susan read sounds like historically. Something like this. Creator, I thank you that I'm not like the rest of humankind, not like these savages who need to be saved from their demons, taught civilized ways of living, and brought to worship God in the only true way, which is the way we worship. We will demand it of them, or we will crush them. Isn't this a blatant example of living a cheap counterfeit of the gospel of Christ? Empire has never been designed for Christian community. In fact, those who model their lives after the Christ of the Gospels have always been at odds with empire. Always. Aligning with empire offers power and notoriety and control. Identifying with empire is certainly intoxicating, but it also destroys everyone and everything that the powerful exploit. None of this reflects the vision of the Christ who said he had no place to lay his head, and who voluntarily sided with those who were the most ostracized by religious establishment and by empire. Last week, we talked about the role our ancestors play in our lives, and we noted the positive and the redemptive qualities, and they are there. However, ancestors can also represent the negative driving force behind attitudes and actions, unless these forces are consciously confronted and explored. Now, people who favor freedom of speech land in a quandary. When do we call out abuses? When does my freedom infringe on your freedom, your safety, your freedom to make your own decisions, making it possible for you to think and worship and live freely? When do we hold people accountable? By what criteria? And for what? Some actions and decisions are decidedly destructive. Not all actions are equal. We take that reality with us when we go to vote on Tuesday, or if we haven't already done so. Be alert. Watch for statements and actions and threats that need to be called out for what they are. That's part of our mission, as EJ outlined. When answers are too glib, too easily parroted, lulling us into complacency, beware. Asking questions leads to further faithfulness, while holding to inflexible answers locks out growth, evolving wisdom, and the miracle of living in mystery. Keep this in mind in both the religious and the political spaces. When spirituality becomes institutionalized, the pull toward formulas becomes very enticing. They're on full display in this separated one, or the Pharisee's prayer. His words shout something like this: I know what to do and how to do it. Look at me. I determine when to use force and when not, because we know they used force. I can be faithful in relationships. I have the accepted lists of right and wrong beliefs. I adhere to set spiritual regimens so others will be impressed. Something I can really do well is keep rules and judge others according to my adherence to set rules. In other words, I'm living successfully, faithfully, wholly, and you're not. That basically sums up that separated one's prayer and mindset. If there's a clear enough checklist, theoretically we can arrive, can't we? I mean, you can become nearly perfect if you keep all the rules. Wow, that's a trip, isn't it? This possibly lets us relax and gives us permission to stop reaching and stop questioning and dreaming and envisioning more if we only follow the rules and check off the right boxes. It's comfortable to know what comes next, what to do. It's neat. It's not at all messy. I wonder if the separated one actually felt insecure in his religious expression or position, because sometimes the loudest proof of perfection rests on the crumbling foundation of anxiety, fear of being found out. So be at ease. Arriving is not the goal. Perfection is not possible. The mystery of the journey and the face plants that bruise and dirty us put us in a place of mercy. The tribal tax collector, the one who himself called himself pitiful, full of bad thoughts and wrongdoings, he returned home in good standing with Creator. Those who are fixated on formulas, the checklists, the rules, easily lose sight of the kernel, the piece of life that is valuable and real, that which forces us to lean on God, the experience of dusting oneself off to keep on climbing. We can really do formulas and checklists in church. If attending meetings, or creating just the right order of worship, or participating in enough community initiatives is the ultimate focus, we're missing the kernel. However, if all of that is fuel to propel us into more wisdom, creates peace as we live through a storm, gives us a deeper appreciation of the place of our neighbor, well then, we genuinely have something to celebrate. Rob Bell, in his book, Everything is Spiritual, writes about how easy it is to miss the point, and I quote, "This was the breakthrough for me, realizing that no matter how well you get the forms right, the language, the definitions, the explanations, it was still possible to miss the intention of the form. The forms aren't the goal. The goal is an experience of spirit. I began to see that you can have every form imaginable, but without spirit, without that animating, propulsive energy doing something in it. It's just a form, just a prayer, just a set of beliefs, just a religion, just words." That's the book that the men's book discussion group is going through, and quite frankly, I wish all of us were reading it. It's amazing. If you can get the audiobook, it's even better. But forms are cheap counterfeits, a polished exterior without interior. The right words don't matter. Genuine words spoken honestly do. Compliance paralyzes. Humility is a kiss of the divine. Recognizing that forms are aids for learning at best will revolutionize how we understand our own traditions. For example, how did it feel to pray those different words as our community Lord's Prayer this morning. It's kind of unfamiliar, right? Maybe we stumbled over a word or two. I know I did. Some might have even found this distracting. But it got us to thinking, didn't it? When the followers of Jesus asked him how to pray, they were likely expecting a formula. And Jesus was intent on imparting the spirit of the life of faith. I doubt whether Jesus intended for us to actually repeat the words of the Lord's Prayer as we do. They simply represent areas of faith that are important when we commune with God. Recognizing God as both familiar, our Father, and wholly separate from us, who art in heaven. Declaring God's reign as something entirely different from the drive for empire we experience all around us. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Acknowledging that we owe who we are and what we have to God. Give us this day our daily bread. Requesting forgiveness of God for falling short. Forgive us our shortcomings. And committing to forgive those who hurt us as we forgive those who wrong us. These are all reminders to prevent our humanity from morphing into a cheap counterfeit. This consideration of counterfeits and authenticity is not meant to create yet another checklist and make you anxious. Quite the opposite. We have plenty of that. This is an opportunity to rethink some of the things we do out of habit, to let go of what doesn't pull us towards the Spirit and doesn't help us find our way home in good standing with Creator. The tribal tax collector did not need to measure up to all of what the separated one touted in his list of credentials of holy people. And we don't either. Thankfully,